Hi, I'm Tim Robinson, Editor-in-Chief of AEROSPACE, and with me is Deputy Editor Stephen Bridgewater.
Hi, guys.
And Features Editor Jack Richardson.
Hello.
And welcome to AEROSPACE NOTAM, another edition of our podcast and video cast, looking at global aviation, aerospace and space news, and what we have in the next issue, or the current issue of AEROSPACE, January 2025. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice we're all on Teams at the moment. In the magazine, we cover everything from GA to spaceflight airliners to airports, from air law to eVTOLs, and it's been a packed year already, hasn't it? Gosh, the Christmas break has been quite packed already, and we're now into a quarter of the way into the 21st century. Amazing,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Incredible.
How time flies.
So one of the things we had a look at in the January issue was, and I think we'll start with this because it's a new year, and 2025 is looking back. What did we get right and wrong in the year 2000? What's changed? What hasn't changed? I mean, Steve, you were around covering VLJs in those days, weren't you?
I was. I still. This coming year is my 25th year as a journalist, so I started in the year 2000 and in the general aviation world. So very light jets, the VLJ revolution. We were all going to have a sub-$1 million fly your own VLJ. Well, that didn't quite happen. There are the few that, I guess in a way it was a bit like we've got with the eVTOL advanced air mobility market, and that there were lots of ideas at that point, and then they started to get whittled down to the ones that actually survived. So, we had things like the Citation Mustang, the Eclipse 500 came into service, well, not in massive numbers. So yeah, I think the VLJ thing, it didn't happen, but the technology filtered onto later things. And the other one which I remember is the very first interview I did as a journalist with Richard Noble, who at the time was doing the Farnborough F1 turboprop.
Yeah.
And the idea of this was using general aviation airfields for point-to-point transport. So again, it's almost down to that advanced air mobility, short sector links again. And Richard at the time was proposing that everybody would have something on their mobile phone, because at that point nobody really invented the term app, that you would dial up this Farnborough F1 turboprop to come to your local GA grass airfield and take you to the nearest grass airfield to your destination. So yeah, didn't work out, but I think kind of 25 years down the line, the technology has changed now and we're closer to those sort of things being a reality.
I mean, especially on the app side of things, and people used to things like Uber and what have you. Drones. I mean, the other thing I was looking at was drones, and the rollout of the Boeing X-45, was it? It was the one of the first sort of UCAVs, and that was 2000. Year 2000, and here we are, 25 years on, and we're still not there as sort of like loyal wingmen. People still debating the issue. That's quarter of a century. I mean, the whole thing is kind of, you look at how drones have evolved from the war on terror, the Reaper, the Predator, to the first person view drones now, quadcopters, etc. You see in places like Ukraine. But still, the loyal wingman seems there. 25 years on, we're still in service.
Do you think that's a combination of the technology hasn't advanced at the rate that it needed to be, but also maybe the need hasn't advanced? We always see that great advancing technology during a time of warfare. You mentioned the first-person view stuff there in Ukraine, and that's come on in the last 3 years, leaps and bounds. A bit like looking back at the 1939, 1945, where we went from biplanes to the jet engine because of necessity being the mother of invention. So yeah, maybe the need hasn't been there for UCAV to be advanced as quickly as it could have been.
And particularly, it's particularly interesting when you wind back to January 2000 and how things that have changed since then. So in January 2000, we were relying on aviation stalwarts like the military. They had things like the F-14 Tomcat was still in service, and civilian space the Concorde was crisscrossing the Atlantic, and for space we were reliant on the space shuttles.
And again, I mean, mentioning Concorde, year 2000 obviously was obviously a tragic year in the Concorde crash at Le Bourget. and that was the end of the sort of like the start of the end of Concorde, obviously. 2025 coming back maybe with Boom Supersonic, do we think?
Well, as we're recording this now in early January, Boom have not quite put the XB1 through the sound barrier, but it's imminent, I think, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So yeah, supersonic flight. It's still, people are still interested in it. There's a lot of hype, a lot of interest in to see whether Boom Supersonic can develop a successor to Concorde, and whether people still have the need for speed. I mean, I'll talk about obviously crashes as well. We're going to get onto that a bit later on. And it's been a bit of a horrific time over the Christmas break for aviation safety, but still there, looking at past 25 years, what we went from passenger numbers 1.8 billion to 9.5 billion today. Yeah. And still
incredible numbers.
Still, I mean, this was it's the two things we've had recently, and I think I made it the worst year since 2018, I think. But that's still, given the incredible number of people who are in the air at any one time, they're still, utterly incredible that we managed to do this. Yep. But it's something that is it needs constant vigilance and yep. constant attention. So. Yeah, incredible. I mean, if you'd gone back there and sort of said, 9.5 billion people traveling in next 25 years, how many crashes do you think there might be? People would probably be sort of, saying thousands would be dying every year, and it's not happened.
Yeah.
It's a real unsung success story.
The other thing that deserves a quick mention is the Aeronautical Society in predicting the future. 25 years ago, 26, it was actually formed in 1999. The Royal Aeronautical Society formed its Greener by Design specialist group, and that was looking at sustainable aerospace, sustainable aviation, ways to fly greener. Look at it now. Every single press conference that we go to, every single news item that we release, that we get, almost every single one has got some kind of sustainable angle about people trying to work that into and get address the challenge of sustainable, low carbon, zero carbon flight. Pretty ahead of the game there that the society was in thinking about that. And the other thing also, space flight to the year 2000. Jack, you mentioned already with the shuttle, is that was the construction of the ISS, and permanent, kind of crewed. It wasn't finished in the year 2000, but since then we've had permanently people in orbit. Mm-hmm. So there's children now growing up, or young adults actually, who have never known. Known people not being in orbit. So it's going to be interesting coming up into what happens after the ISS. Obviously, you've got Artemis. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later. But also the idea of, do you need a full-time, permanently crewed outpost in orbit, or is it something that we can do in pulsed? Kind of pulsed their presence, as some people are talking about, or is it going to go over completely to the commercial sector?
What's the legacy of the ISS? How well has it set us up to build colonies on the moon and also in the fullness of time, Mars and beyond?
Yeah, obviously other countries as well. China's now with with its own space station. So So looking forward, some interesting things to look back on, and predictions that were made, and we're going to see where it goes, aren't we?
Yeah, so incredible stuff.
What has been happening in the past month? Not much in terms of visits, but we have some interesting stuff has happened, hasn't it? Out and about. Before we,
I think you've been out and about a lot more than we have. I think obviously being London based, there's been quite a few things that you've managed to get to.
Yeah, so probably the highlight for me was going down in December, going down to Boscombe Down and seeing a sixth generation or next generation combat aircraft testbed. So that was the 757 Excalibur. That was converted by 2XL Aviation. It's a Boeing 757 that was reversed engineered by 2XL, and it's going to be operated by Leonardo, who are going to stuff it full of next generation sensors and radars and EO and electronic warfare stuff, and possibly even a virtual cockpit as well, to test things for Tempest stroke GCAP. So really interesting test bed. It's unique. The only other countries that have got that are the US and China. And you go up there and you think, oh, okay, well, it's an airliner with lumps and bumps on it. I've seen these sort of things before. Those apertures they've got on it are huge. I mean, really, really, really big. I mean, and the work that 2XL has done into sort of like, CFD modeling, and basically reverse engineering the aircraft to find out its stress points. And you say, well, why would you do that? Well, because you're going to be putting all these extra bits on it, and extra weight on it. And if you're putting this sort of, these fighter radars on it and stuff, you do not want the, to slam down in a heavy landing one day and the nose to fall off and your priceless combat aircraft program to be delayed while you pick up the pieces from the runway. So really interesting stuff.
Am I right in saying, Tim, they had a second aircraft they've actually taken pretty much into individual components to do a stress analysis?
They reverse engineered a second one and basically took that apart, and giving them the control of the IP as well, giving them control of the data, so they don't have to go to anyone else and say, can you please, and then it taking months, years, whatever. So that was very, very interesting indeed. Yeah. What else have we been?
Well, we had a pre-Christmas night out, didn't we? So we had a social night. We had a Christmas party at the Society for Staff, and then we also had a separate publications night out where we went to see Tom Hanks' Moonwalkers exhibition,
which was absolutely brilliant.
In London. It was great. It was actually the second time that Tim and I had seen it, and I think it was, for me, I thought I saw so much more the second time round than I did the first. It's for those that don't know, it's one of these immersive experiences, it's in London. It's at the Light Room, and they project onto the floor and the four walls around you, and it tells the story of the Apollo missions and touches on the return to space with Artemis, all narrated by Tom Hanks, who is a huge, huge space nerd in his own words. And he talks about him growing up as a child during that space race period and how it felt. And I have to say, it's probably not something to go to if you have motion sickness. They're projecting on the floor. But you are put on the moon. You're on the launch pad as they're launching an Apollo 5. You even go inside a piece of moon rock and inside a microchip and just incredible footage. But really, I think it's been extended for a little bit longer. So if you get a chance to go down to London to the Light Room, it's not far from St Pancras. Really, really incredible day.
It's fantastic. Yeah. It's a fantastic experience. It's the second time I went as well, and likewise, I think I saw more the second time, and it's particularly good for visualizing the spacecraft themselves when you get an idea of the true scale of the Saturn V rockets.
It is, and we took some of the team from our events team, so Leah and Mary and people like that, and who are not as immersed in the aviation world as we are, and to see their faces was really interesting. That sort of realization that we know space is big and we know space is difficult and all the cliches that goes with it, but when you see it from somebody who's not immersed in the world as much as we are, it really brings it home. Just space is really cool.
Brilliant. Okay. And the other thing that I went to just before Christmas also was I went to go and talk to the Air Baltic CEO. So that's Martin Gauss, who is CEO of Latvian carrier Air Baltic. Had a chat with him. They're looking to do a planned IPO offering in the first half of this year. So that's news itself in itself. They are an A220, all A220 sort of regional, a bit more than a regional airline, but interesting at how kind of forward-looking this airline is, because they're going to be basically the European launch carrier for Starlink. So free, roll out high-speed in-flight or Wi-Fi using Starlink on a smaller aircraft. And they've also pioneered other stuff, sort of Bitcoin payments, NFTs. They're using AI in their legal department, but also, and this links in later, he was very keen that they could start flight operations to Ukraine basically the day after any peace deal was signed. They've got aircraft there ready. And he was sort of saying about how you're going to need a Marshall Plan to reconstruct Ukraine after the war, and they're ready to be that and sort of like contribute to it in terms of this air transport and the massive diaspora that is spread out all over Europe. So we got that, and then the other bit of news there that happened, and we were all in the office for that, but it was downstairs at RSHQ. GCAP, the joint venture was signed at RSHQ, which is probably one of the most significant military programs on the planet at the moment. Signed in RSHQ. We had glimpses of it. I think we could probably sort of say a lot of interest in there, a lot of VIPs there, and history being made in the building. Incredible stuff. Now there's still obviously they still haven't got a name for it, so they need a good name for that. So there's still stuff to come out for the name. What are you going to call it? And also names of the the CEOs and what have you. So, but anyway, it's going to be fascinating stuff, and really, really, kind of exciting that it was signed at RSHQ.
Yeah. Aero Society at the front of the news yet again.
Yeah. Right. So we're going up to news roundup. So. Gosh, like I say, what a it's been a busy time for news. So shall I head off?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, so the first thing we've got in the news, obviously many people will be aware, we got the Jeju air crash in South Korea, tragic incident that happened there, and just want to stress obviously that we stay away from speculation and kind of comment on live investigations as much as possible, except to say that from the look of it, it was coming in at a fair speed on, so wheels up landing. It didn't appear to have flaps down, flaps down either. There was radio call of a bird strike, I believe. So what we do know, and obviously then it ploughed into a kind of a berm or a concrete sort of standing that was keeping the ILS antenna up. So really, kind of tragic accident, and we're just waiting to see what comes out of there from any preliminary action report. But it is one of those baffling accidents, I think. I think you could probably pretty easy to say it's a baffling accident. And something that somebody said on social media actually sort of struck me is that as the industry gets safer and safer, and we've covered this a little bit in the magazine as well, you get these. What you're left with is the real outliers of very, very unusual accidents that happen.
When all of the Swiss cheese lines up, isn't it? That's
when all of the Swiss cheese lines up, and it's also important to kind of remember that often some of the quickest takes, often some of the early takes, are inevitably proved wrong, and it then comes out. There's further information that comes out. So one that we need to mention, obviously, but I think it's one that without further details, I think would be it'd be unwise to kind of comment further about it.
Yeah.
What else have we got? Another airline. Steve.
Yeah, I've got another ad. So the vagaries of publishing schedules mean with Christmas we went to print very early with the magazines. So these both the South Korean accident and the one I'm about to speak to aren't actually in the magazine itself, but they are sufficiently important news that we felt need to mention them. And of course, this is the Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer, which crashed in Kazakhstan on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. So this aircraft was routing into Grozny in Russia. Appears to have been subject to GPS spoofing or GPS jamming. Looks like Ukraine was attacking Grozny with drones at the time. The crew, by all intents and purposes, had 2 attempts at landing in thick fog. On the second attempt, they reported a bang, which they initially thought was a bird strike. Were then routed out to Kazakhstan, where they had 2 attempts at landing with what appears to be very little control over the aircraft. It looks like they lost the hydraulic system and have been damaged to the airframe itself. So there are strikes here of a number of other accidents in the past, one being the Sioux City incident with the DC-10, where the crew were bringing it in with differential power, and it looks similar to that, where they were flying the aircraft with differential engine power to either climb, descend, turn left, turn right. They almost got to their destination, but unfortunately crashed just short of the runway. Miraculously, several people survived. I think it was about 29 people survived the incident. It looks like it was incredible airmanship to get that far, I have to say. Although now we look at the pictures of the wreckage and it appears as though the damage has not been done by a bird strike, and it is looking increasingly like it was hit or in the proximity of some sort of surface-to-air missile. Russia initially denied this. I think now that all the evidence is certainly pointing towards an incident of that type. So again, we'll wait and find out, but it looks that there seems to be shrapnel the rear fuselage, which seems consistent with a SAM going off somewhere close to the aircraft. So as we know, Grozny was under attack from Ukrainian drones at the time. Russian air defense were firing missiles. Maybe we can do the sums.
Yeah, and well, the other thing to that, again, caveat of wait for accident reports to come out. But the other thing that points to that conclusion is, of course, Vladimir Putin not apologizing for the tragic incident or tragic accident. He obviously not sort of directly taking the blame there, saying it was a Russian surface-to-air missile that shot it down. But this highly unusual step, I would suggest, shows that the Russians know exactly what happened, and here's the thing. I mean, if it had gone out of the Caspian Sea and it had not made it in and gone down in the middle of the Caspian Sea, when will we know? It would just be put down to bird strike, emergency. And we're none the wiser. I think what it does show up is, again, the dangers of overflights over these war zones. So we'll obviously MH17 shot down over eastern Ukraine, but we also had strangely enough, a Ukrainian 737 that was shot down over Iran, over Tehran in 2020. And that again was mistaken by surface-to-air missile operators as a hostile aircraft, hostile missile, and shot down. So sobering stuff, unfortunately, over the break to report on, to come back to. So over to you, Jack. Let's have some brighter news. Brighter news in getting close to the sun. A bit more
upbeat, Jack.
Okay, well, there's been particularly on Christmas Day, in outside of Earth's atmosphere, there was the remarkable culmination of the Parker probe's 6 year journey towards the sun. and on Christmas Day, it's Christmas Eve rather, the probe flew as close as any man-made project ever has to the sun, so within 3.8 million within miles of the surface, in order to gain a greater understanding of the science of our star. And on New Year's Day, we had the good news that the telemetrics of the satellite were all working when it sent back key data.
So they went at night when it was cooler. The old ones always the best, aren't they? No,
for those not watching this on YouTube, I've got my head in my hands.
So the other interesting news that popped out over Boxing Day. This is a surprise on Boxing Day. That was not one, but two Chinese stealth aircraft. There's actually probably even a third there if you want to count it the following day. So this was. We still haven't got a destination for it. Some people are using J36. Bill Sweetman, who has written about it for our blog and done some preliminary analysis, is calling it the Boxer, and NATO bomber designations. But one of them is a massive triangular-shaped stealth aircraft, 3 engines. One intake on top, 2 either side, twin seat of some kind, and looks unlike anything else we've seen. So there's the speculation there. It was accompanied. It was accompanied by a 2-seat J-20S stealth fighter, which is. If that was flew on its own, that'd be pretty. Pretty amazing, kind of like people would be snapping pictures. It was broad daylight as well. Obviously, China wanted people to see this, and now Western analysts are scratching their heads and trying to work out what is this? Is it a regional bomber? Is it some kind of new airborne cruiser? What's the third engine for? Is the third engine the same as the other 2 engines? Why would you need 3 engines anyway? So really interesting design. I think when would the last 3 engine military aircraft be? Something like a 50s US bomber.
Was it the XB-51? Was it Martin XB-51?
Yes.
I think that was 3 engine, wasn't it?
Yeah. So and it also belies the claim that frequently gets levelled at sort of Chinese aerospace, that they're just copying Western stuff. J-35 is just an F-35 with 2 engines, etc. This is something different.
Yeah.
And released so publicly. Also, before President Trump takes over, President-elect Trump takes over in January. There's got to be some messaging going on, and not only that, but another one as well. So there was actually the Shenyang. Again, we don't know what the destination is. This looks more like a medium-sized stealth aircraft. Again, tailless. Very, very interesting looking thing. 2 6th-generation aircraft to fly on the same day, and there was even a new AWACS plane based on their transporter, and I think even a kind of a UAV as well also. So they were Chinese aerospace used Boxing Day to reveal what exactly they'd be up to. Very, very interesting.
Particularly going to be interesting to see how these new designs, not only what they are, but what in particular the West will be deploying in any scenario to counter them. So what their Western equivalents are.
Oh, exactly. Yes. Yeah. And whether everybody's on the same page there. What else has flown recently, Steve?
I've got a GA story. There's a surprise, isn't it? General aviation story. We've been following for a while now AERO, French company based in Toulouse. They've had their Integral E and Integral S have been flying for a while. And on the 3rd of December, they flew their Integral E. Now, the E in this is electric. So this is an electric 2-seat aerobatic aeroplane. we said previously, with the limited range currently with electric aircraft, that short endurance sorties are most suitable. So aerobatic training, sort of 20-minute hops, that kind of thing, using quite a high power rating for aerobatics, but short duration, that could be a good use. But interestingly, the Integral E has got a tow hook on the back as well for towing gliders. So a multi-use aeroplane. So that flew on December the 3rd, and they've also, just as we came run up to Christmas, got EASA CS23 certification for their Integral R aeroplane. So that is the tail dragging version. So they've got a tail dragger, they've got a nose wheel, and then they've got the electric nose wheel aeroplane. So really advancing quite quickly now. So it's been, I think, about 2.5, 3 years since the first flight of the Integral, and they've now got the electric version flying, and they've got CS23 approval for the tail dragger. So good news from France.
Brilliant. Okay. What else have we got on your from your call your ride then, Jack?
Well, for something particularly, this is going back to the military side of things, but we mentioned about Donald Trump's return to the White House, but because in Ukraine there's been another what appears to be a first with an uncrewed surface vehicle launching modified Soviet R-73 air-to-air missiles to shoot down what was at first claimed to be one, but later two Russian Mi-8 HIP helicopters. So we've seen lots of firsts from Ukraine in this war in terms of use of first-person drones, but they've clocked up another one now.
Yeah, I suppose that's making those things even more dangerous for kind of to counter anyway, because obviously we've seen footage, haven't we, of helicopters trying to destroy them before they get close to ships. So it's evolving faster than we ever faster. So the other news there. Space news is NASA has slipped Artemis, the Artemis lunar mission. So Artemis 2 is now April 2026, and Artemis 3, which is the crewed landing, boots back on the moon mid 2027. I don't think there was any big surprises about that. They're up against sort of like deadlines and and things with the heat shield on Orion. So it was to do with the obviously there's now going to be a new NASA administrator will take over, and I think it's one of the things that they probably thought they had to probably fess up before a new administration comes in and you sort of takes over. So not really unexpected, but the big question now is with Donald Trump coming back in later this month. What's going to happen to NASA? What's going to happen to SLS when Elon Musk has got the ear of the president? Is it going to be? Are they going to kind of just sort of say cut our losses and just get rid of the rocket? Is there some way it can be salvaged? Is it something going to be accelerated? And don't forget as well, we have the sort of like ticking clock as well of there is now a sort of a space race in a way of China saying they're going back to the moon. They've given a deadline. The current NASA administrator Bill Nelson was saying that there's still going to be able to land before any planned Chinese landing in 2030, but it's just this kind of sort of thing that might galvanize Trump that he wants to get there first, and we're not leaving it. If there's any chance of a US flag on the south pole of the moon, he'll be wanting that, and he'll be wanting the glory. So we'll see what happens anyway, but not really unexpected. What else have we got?
I've got another good news story, actually.
Hey.
So hybrid air vehicles, well known for their Airlander airship. being developed at Cardington initially. They have now begun work on their factory facility near Doncaster. So they've done the preliminary work, doing all the survey, ultimately looking at producing 24 airships a year at that facility, which is just outside Doncaster. It's not at Doncaster Airfield, it's just outside in Greenfield space. And of course, the other good Doncaster news is an airfield which has been closed for quite a long time. The former RAF Finningley became Doncaster Robin Hood Sheffield International, I think it was. Closed about 2 or 3 years ago. They had the first movement again quite recently. Again, it was a 2XL aeroplane, so the same company that were developing Excalibur. We hear lots of bad news stories about airfields closing. This hopefully is the sign of one that's perhaps coming back from the brink.
Okay. What about you, Jack? What's your last one?
So this isn't such good news, sadly, I'm afraid, because during operations over the Red Sea, the U.S. Navy cruiser USS Gettysburg shot down a F/A-18F Super Hornet in a friendly fire incident. Both crew ejected safely, and there's limited information as to what's actually happened, but it's thought that the F/A-18 was carrying out the buddy tanker mission, and the Gettysburg shot the aircraft down, with reports in the area of Houthi drone activities. So it goes to show the risks, even in today's improved situational awareness, these incidents sadly still happen.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, obviously, but luckily both air crew got out, and they had a front seat view of a defense ship firing at them, and a missile coming their way, and luckily decided that we're getting out now. Time to get out. But yeah, it just goes to show that IFF and deconfliction, and presumably someone on the Gettysburg was having a coffee without tea and biscuits, and with the carrier battle group commander. I've got one more to fit in there. Steve, you sneaked in one in with Doncaster. So advanced air mobility, we haven't touched that. So we've got the volocopter has just announced it's going into insolvency. So that's unfortunately the one of the German eVTOL developers. But Lilium, who were insolvent, declared insolvency over before Christmas, they've now been rescued by some unknown investors. So you lose one, you gain another. We'll see how that sort of pans out. Who Lilium's rescuers are, whether they can get that sort of like first flight. They were counting down to a first flight, and what happens to volocopter, and whether also this is going to set off more sort of more bankruptcies or insolvencies in the AM sector. They're in that crucial period now of flight test certification, and that eats up money like nobody's business. Right.
I think also this looking to the year ahead, this could be an interesting make or break moment for quite a lot of eVTOL manufacturers around the world as they get to this stage. So, and also before Christmas, the UK's Vertical Aerospace managed to acquire more money.
Yeah, they got a lifeline there as well after some sort of I think there's some sort of boardroom manoeuvring going on there. Right. Yeah. And now over to our Insight, another segment of the podcast, our specialist group Insight. So over to Seth from the Flight Operations Group.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode. I'm joined today by Captain Mladen Kalajic. Mladen has over 25 years of aviation experience and has excelled as a military pilot, an airline pilot, flight instructor, ground instructor, consultant, and quality auditor. His career includes 7 years in the Croatian Air Force and more than 15 years in commercial airline and air taxi operations. He served as a training manager at the Croatian Air Force's Academy and lectured aerial warfare and theory of flight at the University of Zagreb in Croatia, where he also authored the textbook Theory of Flight. He's led projects in air taxi startups, training development, and has implemented ICAO SMS frameworks for airlines and aerodrome operations alike. Following 2 years as a flight operations inspector with the Croatian Civil Aviation Authority, Mladen joined Air Arabia Abu Dhabi, where he was the quality and safety manager until 2023, and then TRE from there. And he now works with Wizz Air Abu Dhabi as effectively the director of flight operations. Mladen recently conducted an internal research survey project with the Flight Ops Group, and he surveyed over 100 pilots, focusing on the significance of knowledge in flight operations and training. And this, of course, comes at a critical time for the industry, as accidents over the 2024 Christmas period may end up sparking renewed conversations about things like pilot preparedness and the role of theoretical knowledge and how that contributes to preventing aviation incidents. His research explored how pilots, particularly trainers, view the importance of knowledge and how well airlines are addressing this, and where there might even be room for some improvement. He's joining me today from Abu Dhabi to discuss his findings. Welcome.
Thank you, Seth, and nice to be here with you and following a very successful FOG meeting where I saw the very good reception from our peers on this topic. It's nice to follow up and to see is there anything that we can do further on, maybe to motivate some airlines to start looking into this subject, which is dear to me, and I believe it's very significant.
Excellent. Well, certainly glad to have you, and thank you for taking the time. So tell me, what prompted the idea for this internal research, and what sort of key questions were you hoping to answer when you launched into this project?
Well, I guess it's on personal note. I was always a little bit complicated. I had to understand things before I was able to do it. I guess I was one of the rare people going for skiing with a book. I learned skiing on myself from a book. And yes, it started in Air Force Academy when I was instructor. I noticed that my students, some of them, they have lack of applied knowledge, especially interior flight, which I was focused at that time. And I was not surprised because the pressure of the university and going for theoretical exam was high, and then they would come 2.5 years later for practical training. So most of these things have been just memorizing, passing exam, and go on. And similar thing repeated again when I started doing some MPL cadets training. Same thing, they all finish their ATPL exams, and when you come to some basic questions, you see that there is a big gap of really important things. And there was a hunch like maybe we have an issue, discuss with some colleagues, but I'm not taking this bragging, especially from older pilots, new generation, they're useless, they don't know a thing. So I decided to make a kind of survey, just highlighting what is the general sentiment of pilot population, especially trainers, about this topic, if we have really maybe a problem that we should address, or it's just me. So it turned out that based on a survey of 104 pilots, if I'm not wrong, it was interesting one because based on answers, how do you assess theoretical knowledge importance? Of course, it's very important. How do you assess younger generation? Yes, they have a lack of knowledge. And should we do something? Yes, we should do. Airlines should do something. But when it comes to answering, how is your airline doing? How is your ATO doing? Oh, we are doing great. So this was kind of contradiction. So somebody else is doing bad, but we are doing fine. But later, as we had this flight operation group meeting, and then people start giving very nice contribution, it turns out that yes, this is something that is noticed not only by me, but some other trainers, experienced trainers, especially in technologically complex environment of modern airliner. When some things are being neglected, there is just pressure to push it on, put people online. Anyhow, the reliability of airplanes is so high, so it will never happen. They don't need to know basics. But on the other hand, we have multiple cases. Let's say this Qantas 380 flight when they had, 100 conflicting ECAMs, and if they did not default to basics, who knows how the trip will end up. So I believe we are onto something with this survey and engagement from our peers from flight operation.
Interesting. Were there any sort of significant trends and patterns that you began to notice in the responses? Like, for example, were there a difference between how trainers and line pilots differed in their perspectives on the importance of theoretical knowledge?
Actually, yes, there was a difference, but it needs to be, let's say, researched further to get more statistically significant sample. What I noticed that trainers they assess significance of knowledge in different way. They put higher importance on it because they're witnessing it daily, and in their job, I'm sure it's helpful if you have an aspiring student who is very well with the knowledge, and then it's easier to explain some things, especially that are not obvious per se. But on the other hand, line pilots, yes, they consider knowledge important, but not so on a high level. Something like, yes, we need to have kind of knowledge, but not so strict as the trainers, and which is, let's say, expected, the difference between these two populations.
Interesting. And do you think knowledge retention among pilots can be improved somehow in this environment we live in, where technology and procedures are constantly evolving? And by that I mean, I know certainly for myself, I find it easier to study from a paper manual versus an iPad PDF. That's one thing. And another, I was involved in an experiment where we took a flight operations manual and we uploaded it to ChatGPT. And then we took screenshots of an online exam, and ChatGPT was able to read the flight operations manual, read the question, and pick out the answer, and it passed with 95%. So coming into this world, as a pilot, you may not even you can pass these exams quite easily, to be honest with you, if you're sitting at home doing them online. Or you may have a little bit of difficulty retaining information read from an iPad, or anything like that. Do you think, out of the survey and from processing the data, are we doing training wrong in that sense, in the theoretical sense? Have we gone down the wrong path, do you think? What is your opinion there?
I would not say that we are doing things wrong. We just become lazy to apply contemporary development in training methodology, and to apply some widely accepted among teachers and trainers taxonomy of Bloom, and to pushing things on a high level. And as you mentioned, learning from iPad, I'm also more into papers, but also we might want to change things. New generations, they are more into practicalities, into getting information quickly, and more reflecting, wider scope, while we used to read the manuals and memorize. So what I start doing with the cadets, and I notice it's giving some results. Flying on the Airbus, I would just open the system and challenge them on what we see on the screen, and I notice that retention is better, because when they connect the things, it's taking deeper roots comparing to just reading the manual and trying to memorize. And sometimes you see that they are surprised with some new development or new discoveries within the system. And this is also one thing that we might want to address, because the manuals are becoming, thinner and less understandable compared to old generation. Maybe manufacturer, they consider pilots doesn't need to know a lot, but some basic things should not be neglected and cast off so easy.
Yeah, and do you think there's a cultural difference between airlines or regions, maybe, and how information, knowledge like this is handled? For example, rote learning may be a sort of a cultural issue in some areas, whereas other parts, other airlines or other regional areas may focus more on depth of knowledge. Or do you think this is just sort of widespread around the world?
I believe it's widespread. Maybe when we are talking about US, a little bit different concept of basics training. Comparing to EASA ATPL path that is going, dry theory for, 60 months, 2 years, and after that the students are starting practical training. I believe we might work on something like more blended training, giving theoretical knowledge in adequate time to be properly digested. Just one simple example, as ATPL exams, you're studying meteorology, and of course you're learning about monsoon, ITCZ. This is something that most of European pilots that are flying short haul will never experience. And they need to know. And it's happened to me that I came to this region, so I experienced it. So I learned it practical, without relying on what was given to me before. So maybe this kind of thinking can help improve, but I don't think we can achieve a lot in this initial training, because it's a process that's already set up. We might push a little bit some initiative on the airline side, changing a little bit concept of recurrent training cycles. I know it's coming with additional resources, which is never easy to allocate, but this kind of opportunities are windows to improve, to work with the pilots, to identify the gaps, and to elevate everybody's knowledge. Because at the end of the day, you never know when this will be critical, when pilots will have to default to basic skills and knowledge to save the day.
Well, absolutely. That's the whole idea, isn't it? We're the last line of defense. Could lessons from your research be applied perhaps to bridge generational or experience level gaps within the pilot teams around the world? I know certainly now we have pilots who are getting into the industry in certain parts of the world and getting into fairly senior airline pilot jobs quite quickly now. So that's sort of longer apprenticeship, if you like, that's happened in the past is happening much quicker now. Were there anything that came out of your research that would show gaps there, just based on experience and the speed that people are moving through the industry now?
There was 2 or 3 questions related to this, and I cannot put firm statement that we identify for sure, because consider demography of respondents of this survey. There were a lot of experienced trainers, and I was expecting from them to say that yes, there's a generational gap and the new generations are coming, we carry the knowledge or passion, motivation. Although I can witness that is the case. New generation are coming with different motivation. There are notable exceptions. People are coming with passion, from the childhood. But a lot of the students are coming with the idea the pilot job is a well-paid job, and it's easy to finish the training within 2-3 years, and then they start getting a reward for their efforts. On the other hand, I will not mention the region or airline, but we noticed, as you mentioned, quick upgrade to senior position, to common position. Yes, with some flight hours or whatever, but not adequate experience. And then once you hire those pilots, you notice that you might have an issue, that you might be forced to supervise, to monitor, eventually to adjust schedules, schedule with the more senior first officer, which needs to be recognized and properly addressed. And last line, of course, especially post-COVID environment, we are aware that we are losing experience from aviation. We lost so many experienced aviators, and I'm not sure that we did the effort to retain this knowledge, to keep them somehow engaged, and to pass this knowledge on to new generation.
Yeah,
it's also an issue that might be resonating as a consequence of this survey.
Yeah, interesting. And so, how do you see your research project shaping the broader conversation about flight safety and preparedness? And to take that a little further, if you were to take this research further and take another step with it, what sort of areas do you think would be worth exploring further? Maybe new technologies or the type of information that we're training anymore. Is the stuff that we're teaching becoming a little bit redundant? Do we need to bring in new information for newer generations and newer technologies?
Definitely one of the path that we might want to explore is how to bring information in more digestible fashion or manner to new generation. Because also some research show that the attention span of new generation is very short. Recently, I don't remember which company told me that they're tailoring videos for new cabin crew based on TikTok videos. So wow. This is how attention span is going, and they realize they need to adjust. So these safety videos for the training are tailored in the format of TikTok videos. and they realize that it's improving what they want to achieve. So we should not be shy of recognizing where we stand and what is our input to produce good pilots. At the end of the day, it's important that we have reliable aviators. And another thing we might want to explore, since let's say that we agreed we have an issue in knowledge, let's try to identify what is the most important, what we want to address properly, what is the safety critical things, what kind of knowledge, what subjects, where we want to put our efforts in, because mentioning the airlines and the investment in recurrent training, it's very vague. If you don't tell, okay, this is what was identified, let's say general aviation knowledge in terms of theory of flight, maybe some instruments and this and that, this is most critical, let's address this in a proper way. And maybe in cooperation with authorities, because, for example, here GCA in UAE, they insisted that we need to include in our ground recurrent training basics of aerodynamics since 2 years, and now it's becoming part of ground recurrent training, and it's additional effort from the trainer. But it's a good initiative, because obviously they recognize something is missing, and now they are trying to amend it through regulatory enforcement. So maybe some wider consensus between regulators, airlines, organization like ours can yield some better fruits and more concentrated efforts in this direction.
Fantastic. Mladen, that's it's been very interesting speaking to you. It's a very interesting survey with interesting results, and it would be great to see you carry this research forward and put it out to the broader industry in the future. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you for having me, and I hope we will have some good feedback from our peers, because if it stays just between a few of us, then let's say, I would not say waste of time, but yes, waste of time and efforts. In general, I will not change myself, you will not change, but if we want to spread the message to wider audience, we need support from our peer community.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And for everyone watching and listening, just a quick reminder that the Flight Operations Group is running a conference on the 19th and 20th of March in London on single pilot flight operations. It's going to be a great conference. It looks like we have manufacturers and regulators and academia and all sorts of attendees. So make sure you don't miss it. And if you would like to attend, if you go to flightopsgroup.com, that's flightopsgroup.com, there's a form to fill out, and you will be entered into a draw to win one of 2 free tickets to the conference. And I think these conference tickets are worth about £450 or £500 each, in and around there somewhere. So it's a great opportunity for anyone who would like to attend. Flightopsgroup.com, fill in the application form, and you'll be entered into the draw. And I think February 1st, I believe, we'll draw 2 free tickets to the conference. Mladen, thanks again, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Welcome back, and yeah, well, that was an interesting discussion, wasn't it? From Seth.
As always.
So, what features have we got coming in the what features are in the January 2025 issue? So we've got a stunning front cover, haven't we?
Oh, it's a great cover. Yeah,
we've got an upset recovery, an update on upset recovery training from Ultimate High. And they're looking at it from 5 years on. So 5 years on, upset recovery training was mandated. One of the big problems there, arguably still is in a way, is upset recovery and airline pilots getting into unusual attitudes and not having those sort of like basic kind of aerobatics flying skills that perhaps they would have if they were, ex-military pilots. So interesting stuff there. There's obviously been a lot of progress, but still a little bit of, I think, standardization, would we say? That Mark Greenfield was talking about standardization.
The article's written by Mark Greenfield Greeners, who's a new fellow with the Society. Been doing this for a long time. I flew with Ultimate High a long time before UPRT was made mandatory, so probably 15, probably more years ago now, and did the UPRT course when Ultimate High was still flying the Bulldog. And even as a private pilot, I think I learned a huge amount about handling in those sorties. So it's invaluable for any airline crew to, it's real hands and rudder pedal flying. So which, you don't, unless you've come through, as you say, you've come through that military background, or you've started off in the general aviation world. Airline pilots aren't really exposed to these days. It's maybe a couple of generations ago you would have taught on a Chipmunk or a Tiger Moth, and you have that even as your basic training. You have those hands-on skills. They aren't there now if you're coming through on relatively modern aeroplanes. So I think it's invaluable. The one thing that I learned, you do lots of stall spin exercises on the UPRT course. And I flew with somebody called Spiny Norman, who was an ex-Sea King pilot, and we'd done about 5 or 6 climb to altitude, right, spin. And on the 6th or 7th one, he went, "Oh, just before we do the next one, I've just noticed your bootlace is undone. Can you just tighten your bootlace for me?" So I went down into the cockpit, and then he put the aeroplane into a spin. And that for me was the real eye, because you are completely, your head's down. You don't know whether are we going to spin to the left or the right. But previously you'd seen which way you were going to go, so you knew how to get out. And as he likened it to me at the time, he said, it's grandma in the back has just tapped you on the shoulder and asked you something. You turn round, and inadvertently you stall the aeroplane. So it's just, I think not just for commercial pilots, but any pilot, any sort of UPRT training is just, it really is life-saving.
Definitely.
Even particularly as advanced as simulators are becoming these days, it's scenarios like that just show you how, as speaking as someone who's not a qualified pilot, just how there's still no substitute for that in-cockpit experience. The synthetic environment can't quite make up for it still.
No, you're right. Yeah. Absolutely. Right.
So what else? What else we got in the magazine?
Jack, do you want to go next?
So there's got an interesting article by Ian Pohl, an ex-president of the society, talking about the issue of contrails produced by aircraft, and he's talking about how the impacts these are seen as having on climate change, and the low-hanging fruit that can be picked in order to mitigate this, which can really give the industry a lead in actually reducing carbon emissions through some relatively simple steps, such as up-to-date altitude management. It's a very interesting article.
Yeah, I mean the there's a couple of things that jump out for that for me. Is first off, the UK and the Greener by Design group that we've had at the RES has been at the forefront of looking at this and pushing this forward and putting it in front of the right people. One of the things there, firstly, is there is a danger now that the UK is ceding its lead in this area, and that other people are now working up. It's gaining traction in the US. The US are interested in it, and so the opportunity we have to be a pioneer, set the standards, and have that feel good, we're making a difference, and we've got this huge airspace, in the North Atlantic tracks to play with, that's basically, so there's that. There's kind of like a, not just from the, you can potentially make sort of instant impact on reducing climate change or climate impact. You can do it sort of straight away. If it doesn't work, you can stop it. But also the political and the economic, benefits of being at the forefront. It's in danger. It's actually in danger. The UK is actually in danger of missing its lead. That's one thing that jumped out. The other thing is, in his article, it's not just sort of reducing, climate change. You can reverse it. You could, if you make the right kind of cooling contrails. There's contrails that cool the planet, and he said we could go beyond removing the warming and aim for net cooling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why not? So he's making the case. What are we waiting for? Why not try it? Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I've got another environmental story actually, but actually on a space theme. So Teresa Paul-Trove has written for us a number of times recently. She's an article now asking whether satellite mega constellations are going to be the source of the next climate catastrophe. And we think of pollution from aerospace being the soot out the back of aeroplane engines, the carbon emissions. So we're launching rockets, and rockets themselves are quite big polluters in their own right. But in addition to that, there's a big cry now to actually deorbit a lot of our satellites. So, we've had a number of features recently about space junk, lots of space junk up there. So now the push is to bring things down. So the idea is any satellite will be deorbited within 25 years. I think the US have actually mandated that it's within 5 years of the end of its life, a satellite must be brought down. However, the act of bringing a satellite back down to Earth and it breaking up in the atmosphere is polluting in itself. So there's huge amounts of aluminium in these satellites. And it comes in, it creates aluminium oxide. You've got huge climate change issues around that. And there are lots of issues that we just don't know yet.
Yeah.
So she's interviewed a couple of experts in the article on this. And we've had a number of things in the past where, if you remember back in the 80s and 90s with the ozone layer, and we had our CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons that were in aerosols and fridges, we spotted that quite late, and changed. We've actually got the opportunity here to make a difference by investigating this before it is a problem. So I think it's a really interesting feature. It offers probably a lot more questions than it does answers, but that's often the way with the advanced stuff that the society looks at. We've identified here that there's a problem, and flagged up that research needs to be done. Is it a case of deorbiting the satellites differently? Do we come in at a different altitude so they break up a steeper angle, or do we actually ask, do we need that many satellites up there in the first place? We are relying for a lot of things now. So, in the same way that we perhaps look at our long distance flying and saying, do we need to fly as much? Well, do we need to launch as many satellites? Lots of questions. And Teresa offers some suggestions and opinions from some very, very good experts. But I think this is a very wide discussion.
It comes back again to what we were discussing before the break, that go back 25 years and a lot of this just wasn't on people's radars because we're far less reliant upon space-based systems for everything, really.
And then it was only state nations that were launching. Now we've got private companies launching, and of course with the satellite mega constellation, the idea is that you launch lots of smaller satellites and you replace them a lot quicker. So a satellite previously would have stayed up there maybe for 30, 40 years. If you look at Starlink and some of those equivalent type of constellations around, the idea is to replace them every 5 years with newer technology. Well, what happens to those that are up there? Do we leave them up there to be space junk, or do we bring them back down through the atmosphere and create aluminium oxides and other polluting agents in the environment?
Or is there a way to recycle them in orbit?
Exactly. I mean, there are, as Teresa said, there are companies looking at doing this. Yeah, but again, how far down the line is that? And has the problem got too far by the time that technology is ready? So it's lots of questions, but I think well worth reading. We're actually putting this out as one of our Insight blogs on the website as well. So even if you're not a member of the society and you're listening to this, you'll still be able to read this article on our AEROSPACE NOTAM blog on our website.
Yeah, and staying on the topic of space, we've had an article here on behalf of the AEROSPACE group looking at a year ahead in space. So it's been 2024 was an exciting year for space. I think everyone agree, and 2025 is going to be no different. And as we record this, we've got New Glenn, which is set to launch. That is imminent. So that's Blue Origin's big heavy launcher. heavy lift, and we've also got Starship lined up for another launch. That's going to actually go and test deploying Starlink satellites. So, Steve, you were talking about putting lots of satellites in. That's going to be able to put lots of satellites into orbit, but also in orbit refueling test. That is one of the key tests that I think they're talking about this in 2025. And if that goes, goes as planned, or is successful, the sky is the limit as to what happens next. You've just worked out, air-to-air refueling for space. The idea of fuel depots, which no one has ever done before.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge technical challenge, but if there's one thing we've learned in the past 25 years or less is, if SpaceX tells you something will happen, it might actually happen.
Yes.
What about you, Jack? What else have we got? We got a good report on China, haven't we?
Yeah, we have got a report on China. Yeah, with the Zhuhai Air Show before Christmas, there were lots of several different designs were on public show again. Fast jets and UAVs as well as missiles. So it gives us more to think about alongside the aircraft that flew on Christmas on Boxing Day.
Sorry, that was supposed to be yours one, wasn't it, Steve?
It was. It's fine. Don't worry.
Oh,
well, I've lived.
But well, interesting from that was obviously was it the J25, wasn't it? No, it's J35.
J35.
Yeah.
J35
yes.
that made its public debut again. Something else there that people kind of knew about there, but it's still a surprise. And some kind of massive thing that looks like a single engine A10.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Which is a drone mothership.
Yeah.
So well worth a read of that from Air Show China, or by someone who was there and taking pictures. Steve.
I've got
back to me. You haven't got any more, right? Okay. So the other one we've got is Ukrainian airports. So that is already on the blog, but that is from a forum that happened last year. But looking at how airports in Ukraine, Kiev Airport, Sikorsky Airport in Kiev, are looking to the future really, and trying to keep things ticking over. What do you do when your airspace is closed? When your airport is, not only it's under potential attack from missiles, bombs, loitering drones, but you're actually under the air umbrella of long-range SAMs from the other side. You look at the maps of Kiev, and it's not that far really from Russian border. If you remember the first days of the conflict in 2022, you saw these pictures of MiG-29s flying low over the city, keeping low, the Ukrainian Air Force kind of hugging the ground. Well, an airliner can't do that. So, but there are plans, and one of the good things about this that comes out there is how the international aviation community is kind of coming together to commit itself to promise investment and restarting operations, and Ryanair. And you may have your own views on Ryanair. You may have your own views on its owner, and wherever there's a buck to be made, they will be there. But as one point, I think that O'Leary is quoted as saying, the fastest way to restart Ukraine's economy or rebuild Ukraine is through low-cost air travel.
Well, the people that are going to go in to rebuild Ukraine need to get there as well, don't they?
Yes, yeah. So there we are. And what's the final one? We got military helicopters, Jack.
Yeah, this was a trip our head of external affairs, Jonathan Clare, went on in October to Warsaw, where he attended this conference on the future of military helicopters. So it's a really wide-ranging trip he's written about, which covered the US Army's future long-range assault aircraft, NATO's next generation rotorcraft, and what's going to be required from that. as well as other presentations ranging from Poland introducing the AH-64E Apache, Norway's experience of the August AW101 search and rescue helicopter, and the challenges that former communist states have experienced replacing their Soviet infantries with Western helicopters.
Yeah, well, it's interesting there. Obviously, we've there's been a lot of talk about the death of attack helicopters, drones. Why would you risk humans in an attack helicopter, scout helicopter? Attack helicopters and scout helicopters particularly, because they're right at the sharp end. But having said that, Poland, which is turned into a military powerhouse in Europe. You think of their defense spending, you think of what they're spending it on. F-35s, F-16s, absolute stacks of kit. They're buying 96 AH-64Es. Yep. Biggest fleet
second largest operator in the world.
Biggest fleet outside of the US, and Poland and Warsaw are fully focused on the threat to the east. So they obviously think whatever's happening in Ukraine, and they're going to be using. I've no doubt they'll be using drones as well. But whatever happens in Ukraine, we still think there's a place for attack helicopters. We think there's still a place for lots of attack helicopters.
Yeah.
Particularly now there's greater knowledge and synergy of how to use attack helicopters with unmanned aerial vehicles, particularly attributable unmanned aerial vehicles, where they can scout ahead and designate targets for attack helicopters.
Yeah. So and then obviously in the issue as well, we've got our usual afterburner section of the magazine, containing all your society news. We got that reports from the Hatfield branch, the Berlin Brandenburg branch. We got medals and awards. If you want to find out about the most prestigious awards in aerospace, there's a QR code there to download the medals and awards brochure. Have a look at there. Have a look at all the worthy winners there we've got. And also, if you've got any branch news and events, if you're involved with your local branch or division, please do send them to features editor Jack Richardson on jack.richardson@aerosociety.com, and we'll endeavour to fit them into the rear of the magazine, into Afterburner section. We'd love to see all your news and what's happening around the branches. Upcoming events, shout outs. What have we got coming up?
Apollo 13. We've got another
13.
Aero Society Lates, popular series of evening events. So we've done Top Gun 2 Maverick, we've done Battle of Britain, and now we're doing Apollo 13 as a film night. That will be on the 30th of January, Thursday, the 30th of January, with a Q&A afterwards with Pat Norris.
Yeah, so Pat Norris, for anyone who doesn't know Pat, is obviously not a household name, but he is ex-chair of the AEROSPACE group, and even though he's from Ireland, he worked in Apollo in the 1960s.
That's going to be great.
So he has got lots of memories and lots of. I'm sure we're going to find lots of interesting stories about Apollo and Neil Armstrong and the whole, getting to the moon and Apollo 13. I'm sure he'll have lots of interesting stuff to say there as we dissect Apollo 13 there. It's a great film anyway, but going there and having someone there to talk to is actually there. I mean, that's just amazing. So do book that. Then on 23rd of January, a little bit earlier, we've got an RAS roundtable discussion, engineering and maintenance personnel shortages in the UK civilian aviation sector. So skills is one of the key focuses at the moment, and it's already provoking some debate online as to where are the next generation of aerospace engineers coming from. Where are the people who are going to maintain the aircraft? Who's there who want to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning, go to some cold and drafty hangar, and pull out a spanner and start playing around with aeroplanes. Previously no problem in attracting in those sort of people, those sort of skills. Today, it's much more difficult. The aerospace industry is in competition with other industries, and there's also, and I've just made the faux pas myself there of saying whacking out a spanner. It's much more digital. It is much more digital, much more getting a laptop, but there is still so maybe there's also a perception problem there of what the career is about, or maybe it's just down to good old-fashioned pay.
Good point. Yep.
Then we've got on the 16th of January, that's next week, we've got an aviation lecture at RSHQ. That is Shaken Not Stirs, The Life and Times of Flyby Technology by Annalisa Russell-Smith, FRES, Chief Strategy Officer, Flyby. Some people there, some of our listeners, some of our viewers may recall Flyby. They flew a small drone called Jackal in the UK, and they actually fired a missile from it, a Thales LMM. From in the UK while it was hovering, which I think is probably a first, from an autonomous vehicle. I'm not aware of Reaper or Watchkeeper firing missiles. So very, very interesting company to watch. And they've also got ideas there for, I think, hypersonic drones as well, which I'm keen to find out about. 29th of January, we were talking about space pollution. We've got the ESSI, Space Sustainable Conference at RSHQ. That again is must attend. I think getting ahead of the talking about as we were getting the RS getting ahead of the game there. The sustainable aspect of space exploration, and let's not end up polluting space and making it unworkable, I suppose, and then coming up in March, we've got the Single Pilot Ops Conference, 19th to 20th of March. That is going to be a high-level event. I would strongly urge, if you're at all interested in the single pilot airliners, probably best start booking now, getting on there, because it's probably going to be a sellout. So that's looking at the technology there of as we went from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 pilot airliners is the next step. Single pilot or reduced crew operations. Now the technology, some people would say, is there already, and the final thing is it cultural, or is it sociological? Of would you get on board an airliner with just one pilot? Maybe from Gatwick to somewhere in northern France, or are you best off having 2 pilots at all times, just in case somebody gets somebody eats the wrong meal and gets food poisoning, or etc. etc. So there is bound to be a lot of interesting debate at that conference. Okay. We're rounding up to the end of the time here. We've overrun again. What are we watching, reading, playing over the Christmas break? There's been lots of time to watch and to read stuff. Steve, go on. You lead us off.
I've had a new book for Christmas.
If you're watching this in black and white,
Norman. If you're watching this is Norman Conquest, which is the autobiography of Vic Norman. So well-known airshow pilot here in the UK. If you've ever seen the wing walkers, the Breitling wing walkers, or the Utterly Butterly wing walkers as they were, Cadbury's Crunchy, Gino, various sponsors over the years, that's Vic Norman. Vic really revolutionised the British airshow industry by turning it into an entertainment world. So truck top landings.
Flying
a Cree off the top of a Mitsubishi Shogun, the world's smallest aircraft carrier, as it was dubbed. All sorts of things. Don't give the MOD
ideas.
And just illustrated. So it's Vic's life story. He's really into his cars as well. So there's some amazing cars in there, and the social scene that there are stories of hanging around with Pink Floyd and Alan de Cadenet and racing cars and live gigs, and it's a really good story, illustrated really well from somebody who perhaps not many people know who he is, but he had and continues to have an incredible influence on the UK airshow world.
Fantastic. What about you, Jack? What have you been reading?
Well, shortly before Christmas, I read one of the many in the series of the Boys series. So I read the Tornado Boys, which is a very comprehensive book on the life of the Panavia tornado. So all the way through from the development in the late 60s and early 70s through to the food service in West Germany, the Gulf, and ultimately Afghanistan and Libya, and also some more surprising and lesser known parts, such as accounts of flying the aircraft from Lossiemouth in the anti-ship role, as well as a chapter on flying the aircraft of the Saudi Air Force.
Oh, right. Okay. That'd be quite
I think
interesting.
what I like about these Boys series, Jack, is that it's not just about the lump of metal, is it? It's actually written by, as the name suggests, it's the boys and girls who flew and worked
this
on the
one
aircraft.
they make the point of this is one of the first ones where one of them is actually a girl. So yes, and
I'm just looking at my shelf. Yeah, I'm just looking at my shelves now, and there's Meteor Boys and Shackleton Boys and Lightning and Cam. They've done the whole. I think somebody did a vampire book as well that we may know. So it's a great series. And
it's fantastic.
I've not got Tornado, so I must get that one, Jack, on your recommendation.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Okay, yeah, it's worth reading.
Tim, have you been reading or have you been simming?
I've been simming, so I managed to get a bit of stick time in over Christmas, and I finally caught up with the latest edition of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. So it was launched. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly, but I held off it. There were some launch issues that people were complaining about, like waiting for an hour for the thing to launch, it being stuck on loading screens, etc., etc. So unless you're living on another planet, you're aware of Microsoft Flight Simulator. This is the latest and greatest. 4 years on from the big one that was a huge hit. And I mean, the amount of millions of people who are playing it. I think also COVID helped because people couldn't travel, and all of a sudden there's this, and this is even better in some ways. I'm caveating it in the amount of detail they've stuck into it. So it's crazy amount of stuff there. You can. The satellite resolution, the data they seem to be using is even finer. The kind of the photorealistic cities that will kind of pop up, and you can fly around. Much more aircraft in there as well. I mean, there's everything there from airships to balloons to trikes to gliders to heavy iron. You name it, it's in there. Even just at the standard edition, there, and there's just some gobsmacking moments, like taking a gyrocopter and going off one of the cliffs in the Grand Canyon. And if you're in VR as well, you're looking around and it's like, oh, just truth. Vertigo sufferers look away now. So
what have you been flying, Tim? What have you checked out on so far?
I've just been mucking around in the UK trying the helicopters. There's a squirrel in there. There's also the R22. So the new things in there. There's a career mode which I haven't even touched yet because there's just too much to actually dip into. There's challenges. The career mode is interesting because it was one thing that was leveled at it last time as to, well, if you're new to aviation, how do you? So it kind of mimics a PPL. However, caveats is that some things in it are still broken. The marketplace, the in-game marketplace, isn't working yet, and they are streaming it. They're streaming the data down, so you're kind of reliant on. It runs well on my aging PC rig, but you're reliant on a fast internet connection.
Oh, right.
So if you're there and you're trying to fly a Super Hornet at 400 knots over London, it's not going to be able to. It's not going to, unless you're on some kind of blazingly fast fiber optic thing. It's not going to be able to keep up.
Scenario where you want a lag effect.
Yeah, so there are still things there, and that even comes down to the cockpits. So the cockpits are streamed as well. The actual aircraft is sort of streamed rather than kept locally on your machine. So there's some weird design decisions, and some of the keys don't seem to work, and they've moved some things and things like that. So there are some complaints about it to say not quite there. I'm sure they'll get this sorted out. and I'm sure it will evolve like the previous one did into an absolute sort of stunning, and it's basically a world simulator, 1:1 scale world simulator. I mean, you can even now get out of your aircraft and do a walk round, and there's wild animals there. There's migrating wild animals in there.
Of course there are. Of course there are.
They've modelled all the helipads in the world. So there's now helipads on lighthouses on top of hospitals, and there's even now and it's not quite working. The previous version pulled in live air traffic data from ADSB. This has now got ship data from AIS.
Incredible.
So
what we should do is, you see there's this career thing on there where you can effectively do your PPL on there.
Yeah.
Tim, we should get you to learn to fly something in the sim, and then we should put you, let's say it's a Pipistrel or a Cessna 152 or something like that, then put you in the right-hand seat with an instructor and see if you can fly that aeroplane having only trained on the sim with the instructor crossing his arms. What do you reckon?
Right. Well, that's a challenge there for any instructors in the UK who have got a death wish.
I think it'd be a really good analysis to see just how good this simulation is.
Yes.
Let's make that happen. That's our mission for 2025.
And the other thing I was just talking previously about it. The other thing I was just catching up with, again, this is a bit late to the party. A Netflix series from 2019, Departure, which is a fiddly described MH370 missing aircraft kind of mystery over several episodes. It's like one of these streaming series. Christopher Plummer there in charge of a sort of like a high-tech AIB that's in some sort of fancy shed. Externally, the sheds look like kind of hangars at some kind of GA airfield, Blackbush or Farnborough somewhere. Internally, they're all high tech, and they've got massive screens there. And it's all darkened, and it's but it's kind of it's interesting, and it all revolves around a T-tailed, twin-engined, wide-body aircraft produced by Windsor Aerospace.
Interesting combination.
That has gone missing over the North Atlantic, and shades of the Rutland reindeer.
Yes.
If you get that reference, please tell us in the comments. So anyway, on that note, we'll leave you to it. We said don't talk. We'll keep to the minimum talking this time. Where can people keep up with RES in the Mag?
We do our twice weekly blog on aerosociety.com, and we're all active on various social medias. I'm most prolific on Facebook and LinkedIn, where I'm both the Stephen with a PH, Stephen Bridgewater. Jack, what about you?
I'm mainly on X and under RAES Jack R.
Okay, and Tim.
I'm still on RES, ex-RES Tim R, but I'm also increasingly active on Blue Sky as well, where there's the same RES Tim R and then there's .Blue Sky, and I can't remember the rest of it. But anyway, you'll find me. It's the same profile pic. Views, questions, feedbacks. We're always interested in that. Send them in. And a reminder, we're on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, as well as YouTube. So that's all for us for now, and we'll see you next month.
Take care.
Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Bye.